AI systems are getting smarter and honestly more powerful every single day. They're weaving themselves into everything we do, from creative tools to, well, our critical infrastructure. But as they get bigger and more capable, the need to protect them, that grows exponentially. So today, we're going to talk about AI security. Let's get into it. And that's the big question, right? When you're dealing with something as complex as an AI model, figuring out how to secure it can feel, well, kind of overwhelming. So let's try to look at it a different way. Instead of just thinking about code and data, let's imagine we're building a fortress, a real digital stronghold, designed to protect this incredibly powerful intelligence inside. And of course, every good fortress needs a blueprint, and this right here is ours. This document lays out a whole framework of security controls that are basically the architectural plans for our AI fortress. It breaks down all the defenses we're going to need into these clear, manageable layers. So let's explore them, one by one. Okay, so our first stop has to be the most protected part of the entire structure, the inner sanctum. This is where the most valuable asset lives, and keeping it safe is absolutely everything. I mean, if this part falls, the whole fortress is compromised. So what's inside that inner sanctum? It's the AI model itself, that core intelligence we're trying so hard to protect. You can think of it as the king in the castle. So model controls are basically the specific rules and the personal bodyguards whose only job is to protect the king from any harm, manipulation, or corruption. Now, according to our blueprint, these defenses really come in two main flavors. First up, you've got model evaluation. This is kind of like constantly assessing the king's judgment, right? Making sure his decisions are sound and that he's still fit to rule. We're always checking for weird outputs, potential vulnerabilities, or just any sign of behavior we didn't intend. Then you have model guardrails. Now, these are the strict protocols, the absolute rules of conduct that the king must follow. They are the non-negotiable boundaries that stop him from making a truly disastrous decision, no matter what kind of requests are being thrown at him. And this slide shows just how simple but seriously effective a guardrail can be. A prompt template, for example. Think of it like a formal script that everybody has to use when they speak to the king. It forces every single interaction into a safe, predictable structure. This helps prevent outsiders from using clever or tricky wording to confuse the model with some kind of malicious request. It's a fundamental rule of engagement. All right, so the inner sanctum is secure. Now we can move outward to the next layer of our defense, the main walls, the watchtowers, and that heavily fortified main gate. This layer is all about controlling who, and just as importantly, what gets inside in the first place. And these are what we call our gateway controls. They're like the ever-vigilant guards at the fortress gate. Their one job is to inspect every single request trying to get into or out of the system. They are that critical first line of defense, filtering out all the obvious threats long before they can even get close to the king in the inner sanctum. And this list really shows just how many tools our guards have at their disposal. It is not just one simple lock on the door. No way. We've got prompt firewalls to block malicious language, modality limits to control the type of information that's even allowed, like maybe it's text only, no images. And then we've got a whole suite of controls for volume and access, rate limits, token limits, quotas to stop any one person from hogging all the resources, and of course, endpoint access controls. Each one is like a different key or a different checkpoint a request has to clear. So let's break a couple of those down. Rate limits control the frequency, how often you can make a request. Think of it as only letting 10 visitors approach the gate every minute. Why? To prevent a mob from just rushing it. This is how you stop denial of service attacks. Then you've got token limits. These control the size of each request. That's like saying each visitor can only bring a small bag, which prevents them from trying to smuggle in something huge and dangerous, like a massive, complex prompt that's designed to break the model. Input quotas take this whole idea even a step further. This is all about managing the fortress's long-term resources. You can limit the total size of the data a user sends over a day, like putting a cap on grain shipments. And you can also limit the quantity or the number of separate requests they can make, sort of like a limit on how many messages a single courier can deliver. It's all about preventing any one user from monopolizing the AI's time and draining its resources, making sure it's available for everyone else. And finally, there's probably the most fundamental control of all, endpoint access controls. Seriously, before we even worry about what's in your request, or how often you send one, or how big it is, this control just asks one simple question. Are you even allowed on this road? Do you have the right key to get to the gate in the first place? It's the most basic, but you could argue it's the most essential layer of gateway security. Okay, so we've built our inner sanctum, and we've fortified our gateway. But, a fortress that's never been tested is really just a fancy building. So now, it is time to see if our defenses actually work when they're under pressure. It's time to run the battle drills. And this is the final crucial piece of our blueprint: guardrail testing and validation. What this really means is that we have to actively try to break our own defenses. We launch simulated attacks, we try to trick the model with what are called adversarial prompts. We do everything we can to see if our gateway controls can be bypassed. This whole process is often called red teaming, where you basically hire your own attackers to find the weak spots before a real one does. And this quote, this really gets to the heart of what modern security is all about. It's not a one-and-done kind of thing. Threats are always evolving. New attack methods are being invented literally every day. So a strong defense requires constant vigilance, continuous testing, and the humility to know that no wall is perfect forever. You have to keep checking for those cracks, patching them up, and reinforcing the walls before the next storm hits. So, after going through our entire blueprint, what's the big takeaway? We've seen that securing a complex AI system isn't really about finding one single magic solution. It's about a whole philosophy of defense. At the end of the day, it all boils down to these three fundamental layers. First, protect the king and the castle, the model itself. Second, defend the gates and the walls by scrutinizing every single interaction. And third, you have to relentlessly test your defenses to make sure they'll hold strong when it counts. Each layer supports the others, and together they create a structure that's so much stronger than any single wall could ever be. So if there's one thing to remember, it's this. There is no magic bullet. There's no single shield that's going to make an AI perfectly secure. Real, true security comes from a deep, overlapping system of controls, what we call it defense in depth strategy. It's where each layer, from that inner sanctum to the outer gate to the constant battle drills, works together to protect the whole thing. If one layer fails, another one is right there to catch the threat. And that kind of leaves us with a big, forward-looking question. The blueprint we've looked at today, that's for the fortresses of right now. But the world of AI is changing at an absolutely incredible pace. As the intelligence we're protecting gets even smarter, and the attackers trying to breach our walls get even more clever, the question we have to constantly ask ourselves is, what will the fortress of tomorrow even need to look like?